The Haidong Theater's single night of artistic defiance had faded, leaving behind only the lingering scent of old makeup and the ghost of a standing ovation. Xiao Zhan, sleeping for the first time in his small, rented apartment without the paralyzing dread of tomorrow, awoke to the sound of frantic knocking. It was Sister Li, looking less like a high-powered manager and more like a harried post office employee, surrounded by an improbable mountain of packages that choked the narrow hallway. "Zhan, happy birthday," she muttered, exasperated but with a twinkle in her eye. "You told the world you were tired of the gilded cage, and the world, well, they listened. But they don't do things by halves." The delivery trucks started lining up at 5 a.m. Customs is calling this the avalanche of authenticity. None of it is jewelry. None of it is cash. All of it is baffling. Zhan stepped over a massive, burlap-wrapped object and examined the labels. The packages weren't from corporations. They were from collectives, groups, and individuals identified by strange, fan-created monikers: the Scrappy Engineers, the Global Flaw Alliance, and the Silent Brush. The most common item, Sister Li revealed, was soil. Bags and jars of local earth, labeled with coordinates. They sent you dirt, Zhan. Soil from their hometowns, asking you to paint with it. It's symbolic. It's overwhelming. It's beautiful and utterly unmanageable. Zhan knelt beside the burlap package and slowly peeled back the wrapping. This was the first true mind-blowing gift. It was his original Vespa scooter. Not a replica, but the battered third-hand model he'd used to zip through the chaotic traffic of Beijing during his trainee days. The one he'd sold in a panic for rent money 15 years ago and thought long lost. The scooter was meticulously restored, humming with a perfectly tuned engine. But the restoration was the mind-blowing part. The fan collective, the Scrappy Engineers, had deliberately preserved every significant scar. The dent where he'd scraped a taxi during a stressful rush-hour dash was still visible beneath a clear coat of lacquer. The chipped paint where he'd dropped his design portfolio, the one containing the terrible, beautiful first sketches, was framed by polished chrome. They had left the wear, the history, the failure, and the struggle intact. A small, elegant plaque was mounted on the dashboard. Asterisk, the journey defines the value, not the destination. Ride on, street sweeper. Asterisk. Zhan reached out and touched the old, familiar handlebar, the metal cold under his fingers. He hadn't just gotten his scooter back. He'd gotten a tangible, rideable piece of his lost, flawed history. It was a rejection of the luxury car, a celebration of the struggle. Tears stung his eyes, a familiar, cleansing emotion. "This is an engineering marvel of emotional resonance, Li Jie," Zhan whispered, running his hand over a preserved scratch. "This isn't a gift. It's a memory given form." As Sister Li began the impossible task of coordinating the donation of the Library of Flaws, thousands of rare, unedited first drafts of famous novels, and the Global Clay Army, a silent, ceramic testament to his university mentorship, she stopped at a small, unassuming crate stamped with cryptic logos and warning labels. "This one is different," she said, her voice dropping. "It came with its own certified tech specialist who simply left it and vanished. It's from a group called the Temporal Weavers. I couldn't open it. The seal requires a biometric scan." Zhan, curious, placed his thumb on the scanner. A soft hiss of releasing pressure filled the room. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, was the second, and arguably the most technologically mind-blowing gift. It was a device the size of a chess piece, crafted from matte black obsidian and delicate, glowing copper filaments. It wasn't a phone, a camera, or a recording device in the traditional sense. It was a synesthetic memory weaver, a piece of bespoke future tech designed to archive sensory data with an impossible level of detail. It was rumored to be the cutting edge of immersion technology, developed for deep space exploration simulations. Li Jie read the accompanying instruction card, her voice full of skepticism. "It says here, the superstar has eyes everywhere. The artist should have senses everywhere. Place the piece against the skin to re-experience the moment of your unedited joy." "Zhan, this sounds like science fiction." Zhan, however, was intrigued. The device was pulsing faintly. He noticed a single data file already loaded, named simply Dawn, October 6, 2024. Chongqing. This was the exact date and location of his previous birthday, the moment he had seen the flawed constellation, the global, imperfect light show the fans had mounted for him. He sat on the floor, took a slow breath, and placed the obsidian chess piece against the pulse point on his wrist. The sensation was instantaneous, total, and shattering. He didn't see an image or hear a sound. He lived the moment again. He felt the exact drop in air temperature on the observation deck. He tasted the metallic tang of cold river mist on his tongue. He smelled the faint, lingering scent of burnt pine from the extinguished drones. He felt the prickle of wind against his tear-streaked face. He experienced the specific, overwhelming emotional resonance, the simultaneous feeling of devastating loneliness and boundless, protective love. He felt the weight of his exhaustion melting into the lightness of acceptance. It was hyperreal, a complete emotional and physical echo of the past, preserved perfectly in a technological artifact. It was the ultimate rejection of the filtered, edited, and commercially produced digital memory. This wasn't a clip to post, it was a moment to feel. He pulled the weaver away, his body shuddering. He was drenched in a cold sweat, his mind reeling from the intensity of the emotional replay. What was that? Li Jie whispered, alarmed by his pallor. It was the flawed constellation, Zhan said, his voice hoarse. It was the cold, the smell of the river, and the certainty of love. They didn't give me a picture of the moment, they gave me the soul of the moment. They froze time, Li Jie, not for profit, but for peace. He realized the true magnitude of this gift. It was a key to his own healing. Whenever the pressures of the myth returned, he could use the weaver to ground himself in the reality of his choice. It was the ultimate, personalized therapy device. Yet, even after the scooter and the synesthetic weaver, the one gift that truly stole his heart arrived last. It was a small, plain wooden box, slipped under his door by an unknown hand. It had no identifying marks, no logos, and no return address. Inside, resting on a bed of simple, dried river moss, was a single, tarnished silver ring. Zhan picked it up. It was heavy, oxidized, and clearly had been worn for a very long time. It wasn't an expensive piece, it looked like something a student might wear. He recognized it instantly. It was the simple, cheap silver ring he had bought for himself on the day he'd signed his first-ever entertainment contract, the one he'd worn constantly, right up until the point his management told him it wasn't brand-appropriate for a major star. He had been told to discard it. He thought he had lost it. The morning light in the valley of Mingshan was soft and golden, catching the dust motes stirred up by the restored Vespa as it roared up the winding, unpaved road. Xiao Zhan wore his old hoodie, a backpack full of notebooks, and the tarnished silver ring, clumsy joy, on his left hand. The Vespa, with its perfectly preserved scratches, was a noisy, beautiful act of rebellion against the luxury cars that used to ferry him. He parked beneath a giant, ancient camphor tree outside the ceramic studio. The students, expecting their eccentric celebrity professor, were already milling about. They saw a man who looked younger, healthier, and perhaps a little rougher than the person who had left 6 months ago. His energy was focused, the endless, nervous perfection was gone. His first lecture of the new term was held outdoors. He didn't use a whiteboard or slides. Instead, he pulled out a series of simple, brown paper bags. "Last semester, we talked about making the porcelain look like rain," he began, his voice clear and resonant, carrying without effort. "This semester, we talk about making the canvas feel like home." He opened the bags, revealing the fan-donated dirt, the avalanche of authenticity. There was deep, volcanic red soil from Hainan, pale, sandy yellow dust from the Gobi region, and dark, fertile black earth from the northeast. "This is our curriculum," he announced, scooping up a handful of the black soil. "This earth, this flaw in the canvas, is the most honest thing we have. It will crack. It will fade. It will not hold color evenly. And that," he paused, letting his gaze sweep over the eager faces, "is our design goal." His project was ambitious, a massive, permanent outdoor mural covering the entire south wall of the Institute's oldest, most derelict building, a structure slated for demolition but saved by Professor Lin. It was a rough, cracked concrete surface, the ultimate unedited canvas. The mural's only restriction was that the students could use nothing but the donated soil mixed with local rice glue and river water. The work became a meditation. They couldn't achieve precision. The black soil from the northeast would lift off in flakes, revealing the pale yellow Gobi dust beneath. Rain would smear the outlines, causing the rich reds to bleed uncontrollably into the pale grays. Jean worked side by side with them, his own hands stained permanently with the earth. He embraced the chaos. When a large section of paint, painstakingly applied over 2 days, sloughed off in a sudden downpour, a student cried out in frustration. "Good," Jean said calmly, placing a hand on the student's shoulder. "Now, look at the ghost it left behind. That faded, watermarked texture? That's the real story. That's the beauty of surrender. Let the mountain paint the mountain." Meanwhile, the outside world watched his self-exile with obsessive reverence. The media didn't dare send reporters, fearing another emotional upheaval. Instead, they dispatched art critics. The global consensus was that Jean's pursuit of clumsy joy was perhaps the most profound artistic statement of the decade. Then, one rainy afternoon, a new, impeccably dressed figure arrived at the Institute. He introduced himself as Mr. Chen, an Arts Foundation trustee interested in regional preservation. He was, in reality, the most cynical man in the entertainment industry, a director who had produced 4 of Jean's biggest blockbusters and viewed the star's retreat as a disastrous commercial stunt. Mr. Chen spent days hovering, watching the students smear mud on the concrete wall. He wore a puzzled, horrified expression. Finally, he cornered Jean in the courtyard, sheltering from the rain. "Jean," Mr. Chen began, his voice silky, "let's stop this charade. The market has adapted. They love the flawed artist now. I'm offering you the ultimate compromise, a movie about an artist, a gritty, honest, unedited masterpiece. We film it here. We use the real students. We use your philosophy, but we attach a $300 million budget." He produced a slim, black folder. "It's about clumsy joy, Jean. We sell the aesthetic of the imperfection. You can keep the ring, keep the Vespa. Just let us monetize the authenticity." Jean leaned against the camphor tree, the scent of damp earth and tree bark strong in his nostrils. He looked at Mr. Chen, a mirror of his old fears, the slick, perfect temptation. "Mr. Chen," Jean said, a gentle pity in his voice, "you didn't listen to the symphony. You just counted the instruments." He tapped the wooden railing. "If I take your $300 million, I make perfection the new price tag. This mural, this clumsy joy, is succeeding precisely because it has no price. The rice glue is failing, the colors are running, and the building is crumbling. It is the most honest work I have ever made." Mr. Chen, defeated by the star's unwavering peace, simply looked at the unfinished, messy wall, shook his head, and left the valley. The mural was scheduled for its final unveiling on the day the semester ended. The students, exhausted but triumphant, stood back. The wall was a vast, chaotic tapestry of earthy tones. It was not a landscape, nor a portrait, but a swirling, textured abstract of the local terrain. It was cracked, rough, and strangely alive. That night, they gathered for a small, celebratory bonfire. The Institute was still. Jean, feeling the inevitable pull of his public life approaching, knew he needed one final, defining act to cement his commitment to. He pulled out the synesthetic memory weaver, the obsidian chess piece. "This is the last lesson," Jean told his students, holding up the device. "We painted the earth. Now, we will feel the earth." He led them to the mural wall, carrying a single lantern. The rough, earthy surface looked dark and indistinct in the low light. "When I use this device," Jean explained, "it replays a total sensory memory. Tonight, we will use it to record a moment of pure, shared creation. We will record the feeling of this mural." He placed the weaver against the wall, near the base. He then instructed the students to gather around, close their eyes, and place one hand on the wall and the other hand on the shoulder of the person next to them, forming a chain. "Now, feel the texture," he commanded. "Feel the sand, the grit, the dampness. Hear the quiet. Feel the joy of the struggle. Feel the clumsy joy." As they stood there, silent and connected, Jean pulled out the tarnished silver ring. He pressed the ring hard into the final wet patch of black soil at the center of the wall, using it like a signature stamp. The soft metal left a deep, permanent circular impression, trapping particles of earth and rice glue inside the engraving of. He had literally embedded the philosophy into the canvas. As the ring made contact, Jean simultaneously pressed the record button on the synesthetic weaver, which was still against the wall. The resulting sensation, which only Jean and the students, through their connected hands, felt, was the most profound artistic experience of his life.